Well, happy New Year. I think that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, thanks, JD. Yeah, same to you.
First of all, can we just get into the fitness concerns, obviously going into tomorrow night's game as well, please?
No, luckily the players that played on Saturday came through the game, and Max Meyer has recovered from the injury he picked up against the Arsenal, so that's a bonus. And otherwise, the injury situation remains the same, but we're down to 6 players missing now, and one of those, of course, is Luca, who actually is not injured, he's just suspended.
It's incredible, to be honest, looking at your form as of late, undefeated in the last 10, especially difficult games most recently against Arsenal and City as well, and coming through those in kind of different circumstances. How do you assess it, especially after the Christmas break now everything seems to kind of get back into normality?
I think it's been a heroic performance really from the players, especially seeing as we've had so little chance to change anything, because the team we've been able to put out is the team, and we've had to rely very much on our academy players who've got no senior experience at all really to fill up the benches for us, which has meant that during the course of games at this stage of the season, where you quite often would like to change people sometime late in the second half to A, prevent injuries from muscle strains and the like, and B, to get some fresh legs on the field to help you out. We've not really been able to do that, but that situation is gradually improving. But over these last 10 games, I'm full of admiration and respect for what the group of players we've had to use has performed.
And going into this next game as well, I mean, in form, Southampton, they were going to come with incredible amounts of intensity, as you've seen. How do you kind of assess it going into it, especially only a few days after such an intense game already?
Yeah, it would have been nice, wouldn't it, when you've had a good result and the teams really had to put in the sort of effort we had to put in at the Etihad. It would have been nice to have a bit longer to A, recover, and B, perhaps to enjoy the performance. But it's the same for everybody. The games are being played this midweek for the whole of the Premier League, so there's nothing to complain about, and we'll have to try and make sure we get ourselves ready again and be prepared, as you rightly suggest, for an informed Southampton who have had a very good run of results themselves.
And speaking of the Etihad, how pleased were you to kind of see Cenk? I just spoke to him, he seems to be beaming ear to ear just by getting a goal and kind of restarting his career, as he says. How are you kind of looking at it?
Well, for front players, goals always make them feel that much better, don't they? Because that's what they live on, if you like, or their life is always based around their goal scoring. But I thought his general play was very good. It was an excellent debut, and of course we hope, and I'm sure he hopes, that he'll continue that through the rest of this season and help us reach our goal.
Roy, teach us the tactics. What is it that you've managed to do as a manager to kind of reinvigorate that sort of confidence in a player who just spoke to me a second ago and said I was doubting myself, and you personally have somehow managed to turn his own confidence and mind around? No,
I think you're giving me too much credit there. I mean, we've only worked together for just under a couple of weeks. I've been impressed with him as a person, and the way he's come straight into a group of players and made himself very much at home and won the respect of the other players. I think there's a lot of work that we're going to need to do together, or we'll look forward, I hope, to doing together. But I certainly appreciate the compliment, but I really can't accept it because I don't deserve it.
I mean, I know you're one that's spreading the compliments. I mean, you also gave the association to Dougie, who had been watching him for a couple of years.
Oh yes, there's no doubt about that. To be fair, I watched him then as well, but only on videos, because the responsibility for that side of our scouting and recruitment has been taken over, as in all clubs I suppose, by the guy who is the sporting director, and he put in a lot of work with his men to come up with the name of Cenk Tosun before he went to Everton. And of course I was given the videos to watch. They put a very professional video together of the player, so you get a complete picture of him. I was able to do that, and of course able to see what Doug had seen in him, but we didn't get a chance to get him at that time. But I'm impressed also that Doug has kept the sort of contact up, because it would have been so easy when a player goes elsewhere, a player maybe you've scouted yourself, when he signs for another club, it's very easy to lose contact and to basically forget about him. So Doug did very well to keep that contact, which I thought put us perhaps in pole position to get him to come to us on loan when there were probably other options for him as well.
I mean, with the transfer window still open, 10 days left or so, I mean, beginning of the window, you were very vocal about wanting to improve the squad, wanting to bring additions in. Are we still looking at that at this stage? Carl Walker-Peters is linked with there as well. Scott Banks as well, the young midfielder, is also on the verge.
I know about Scott Banks, that's for sure. I think he's on the verge of joining us, but of course he's a very young player that Doug knows from Scotland, and you know, his first contacts with the club probably will be more on the academy side. I haven't been able to scout him at all, but I know he's a very talented midfield player with the right type that we're looking for. So it'd be nice to welcome him into the club. As for the other transfer targets, or not really targets, transfer possibilities, we're still active. I think, you know, we still have place. There's no doubt about that. But the biggest boost, I think, is going to come from the players that I've not really had much chance to see or work with or use over the last 6 to 8 weeks. 8 weeks is probably exaggeration, but we lost Ward against Liverpool and Benteke against Newcastle, and Patrick Van Aanholt at West Ham, Schluppy the same sort of time. So it's a good month, perhaps even a little bit longer. When these guys come back, they will almost be new players, because it will be 6 weeks since they've had a chance to compete for a place in the first team, and they'll certainly boost and bolster our squad and give me alternatives, which, to be fair, in the last few weeks we haven't had a lot of those alternatives, and that's why at the start of our conversation I was so conscious of the need to praise the guys who've been out there doing the job each week and getting very little respite.
I think my final one for you would be, you speak about kind of wanting to keep this tight-knit squad with the lack of alternatives, but there would be players within the squad that maybe would want to leave, maybe on loan, for options, for maybe more minutes. One of those players that's linked is Connor Wickham. At this stage, is that something that you would viably see in this window?
When it comes to Connor, it's really a question about him, really, rather than me and the club. You know, it's a long time now since he's been able to play regular football, and yet for the last, this season really, he hasn't had many injury breaks. In the first couple of seasons here at the club, he was obviously recovering from a serious injury, and then constantly seeming to pick up injuries. Every time he got back to being close to fitness, he picked up another injury, some quite important ones along the way. So this season we've not had that with him, but of course he's had to sit back and accept that other people have been playing in front of him. So if an opportunity for him came up, I would want to certainly discuss it with him and discuss it with the club, because I think for his future he needs to get a run of games, and I might not be able to guarantee him that here, and if I couldn't guarantee him that here, I'd be honest with him, and it would be a question really of what the club wants to do. But I must emphasise as well that he trains well, he trains very professionally. If he stays, that's certainly no problem for me either. Probably the opposite, because you can't have too many front players, you know, because they're as we've seen in the last couple of games, he got us the equaliser against Norwich and was very active in the equaliser against Man City, so he's feeling quite good about himself. So I've got nothing against him staying, but I do think it's got to be a discussion that the club's got to have, and with him, what's going to be the best for you going forward in your career as a Crystal Palace player? Is it to stay here, maybe only getting the odd minutes from time to time, or is it better to be somewhere where you're the first name on the team sheet, which maybe Roy Hodgson can't guarantee you?
Pleasure. Thank you. Pete, did you have a question?
Oh, sorry, Roy.
Hello, Pete.
After the Southampton game, you got Sheffield United, but then you got a 10-day break. Then you come back to Sheffield United and Everton. Then you got a 2-week break. How disruptive is that to your preparations? I know everyone's been talking about a midwinter break now for years. But yeah, this lack of games and that, is that going to affect the players and yourself?
Only positively, because it's been a very hectic period of time, especially this period over Christmas and New Year, especially when so many players have been missing. So there are many of this 11 which we've just praised for their constancy and their resilience in getting out there. They could do with a much longer break if you could give it to them. So there's no question in my mind about that being anything other than positive. And if there are players coming back who need a game because they've been injured a long time, then we'll manufacture those games and get them the game time they need. And we'll obviously, as we always do, tailor our training and the intensity of our training around the needs of the individual players. But there are plenty of them who will benefit more from the rest than the lack of matches in that next period.
You've worked in other countries where they've had a mid-season break, winter break. Do you think it's about time you had that here, but also was it an advantage to you when you worked in those countries?
Well, I worked in countries, in particular in the Scandinavian countries, that don't actually have a winter break. They don't play autumn, spring football. They start in the spring and they finish at the end of the winter. So the season begins in April and it ends in maybe the end of November or beginning of December. So from the beginning of December through to April, if you want to call that a winter break, you've got a winter break, and then the season is played in one fell swoop. In countries like Switzerland, there's something quite similar because the winter break there is very big, so the league is pretty much divided into two definite parts, and that's obviously for climatic reasons. I think the reason we needed a winter break here, and it's something that not only I but many other managers before me and with me have been lobbying for, is for mental reasons. It's to give people that breather, to get a second wind, as it were, before confronting the second part of the season, and in particular after a period in English football where you are playing maybe 3 games in the space of 5 or 6 days, and you're carrying little injuries and from that period. We've seen this year in particular, I think, an awful lot of players who've suffered quite serious muscle injuries, and it's going to keep them out of the game for months at an end, and it can't be a coincidence that these injuries have come about after this enormously tiring and demanding programme that we have during the Christmas and New Year period. So for me, I can see nothing but benefits from the winter break. I praise the Premier League for the clever way they've been able to do it in not just having one break for everybody, but splitting it up so that the programme in the Premier League can continue, because that's important not only for England but for the rest of the world. And I'm really looking forward to it personally, and I shall be encouraging the players to take full advantage of it and to really get away from football for that period of time, spend time with their families, and then hopefully after a week that might be all it takes for them to get energy back, enthusiasm back, and we're going to need that because there'll be a lot of games still left in the league, and we'll be needing points in those games if we're going to get anywhere near our goal.
You talk about getting points. You hit the 30-point mark on Saturday. The 5 of the next game's coming up. There's only Sheffield United are above you in the table, so that magical 40 points, it's possible you could get it by the beginning of March.
But there are teams below us in the table that are very, very good teams, very big teams. They might just find themselves below us in the table at the moment, but I'm pretty certain they won't be expecting to be below us in the table when the season ends. So if we're going to keep that up, we're going to have to continue playing at a very high level and continue getting the sort of point tally that we've had in terms of games to points over these last few months, and that's going to be a very big ask. And I don't think that the table is necessarily the best guide always at a given point of the season as to where teams are. It probably is at the end of the season after the 38 games, and I think you have to accept we've had 38 games to do what we think we should have done, and where we finished in the table is where we deserve to be, but I don't think we're anywhere near that situation at the moment.
And Southampton, after the defeat against Leicester, 9-1, the positive reaction from the players and manager, because I would imagine you have expected that a team like that may have gone into free fall?
No, not necessarily. I think that teams these days they've got more strength than that. I think the management of clubs and the hierarchy at clubs are stronger than that, and accept that there are going to be periods in the season where things don't go your way, or you've got to come out of a situation which maybe other people will be describing as a crisis, but you've got to bat that away and say, this isn't a crisis, this is a problem we have to deal with. They lost that game. I remember watching it on TV, but I think that the sending off, which provoked either the first or the second goal, was very early in the game. So they're playing against a quality team, trying to get back into the game with 10 men, and 1 and 2-0. Unfortunately, when you do that, can quite easily and very quickly turn into 3-0 and 4-0, and then you're on a slippery slope. And the other team, they've got the game in their pocket. They can't possibly lose. They understand that. A bit like England playing South Africa in cricket over the last few days. When you can't lose, it does wonders for the rest of your game. And I think that if it had been me, I've got no idea how Southampton dealt with it, but I would have been tempted, if I didn't really think that we were the sort of team that was so bad that we were going to get beat by 9 goals every time we played a Premiership rival. I'd have been tempted to put that to one side and correct perhaps anything drastically wrong that you think might have happened in the game, but to write it off to experience and even encourage the players. Use this as a stepping stone. Use this as a platform. Show how strong you are. Show how good you are. Write it off. Write it off to experience. Experience can be useful sometimes.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, George from PA.
Well, I know you've spoken about James McCarthy a few times this season, and at the start of the season saying the midfielders were playing so well that he couldn't get his way in, but he's played 6 of the last 7, starting 6 of the last 7. How pleased have you been with him involved with the 2 goals on Saturday as well?
Really pleased. I think he's been excellent. Getting better and better. We knew it would take a little bit of time because although he was training for quite a long period of time at Everton before he came to us, so when he came to us he was technically fit. There was nothing wrong with him. The injury was in the distant past, but of course he hadn't really been that close to the first team during long periods of time. Hadn't always been on the bench. Hadn't always been, knocking on the door, if you like, to get into the team. And I always knew that the more he did with us, the more the training, the longer the period of time that went by, the chances he would get, getting some minutes here and there, he would get stronger and stronger. And that's exactly what he's done. And I thought the action that he performed for our equalising goal on Saturday was quite incredible. To do that amount of running, to win the ball back that late in the game, to win a difficult challenge, to get himself back up on his feet and produce that pass, that was a real class act, I thought. And it just showed that my faith in him as a class player was being rewarded, and his faith in himself and his determination to get back to that level of football also being rewarded. He deserves an awful lot of credit, as does Connor Wickham, who we talked about earlier. Because when you have these serious injuries which take you out of football for a long, long time, it's not easy to get back to your level again.
Okay, thanks, George. That's the end of the broadcast section.